Hey guys, this is your girl Lira, and you're listening to Self-Reflection Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Self-Reflection Podcast. Today we have Francis Wong on Self-Reflection Podcast. Francis is a professor at San Francisco State University. He teaches Asian American studies, and he is also the co-founder of Asian Improv, a musician, and an activist. Please help me welcome Francis.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here with me to, share your knowledge and also just encourage the youth today.
Oh, yeah. So, well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I know I gave a little brief introduction of who you are, because just talking to you and knowing your background, it's so dense. Do you want to reintroduce yourself just in case I missed something?
Oh, sure. I mean, so I think the first thing I always say is that I'm a musician. I play the saxophone. I write music, and then I also work a lot with other disciplines, dancers, poets, filmmakers, and wherever they can use some music. And then I integrate that career I've had with being politically active in this country ever since really the early 1970s, and more recently in the last 6-7 years I've been taking on being a lecturer teaching Asian American studies. I teach Asian American history, Asian American identities, and a little bit about music and art and its relationship to identity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I know I just give a little speck of who you are, because your background is so vast.
Well, that's what happens when you get older and you stay active,
Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. Today, we're going to start with your background in activism, if that's the right way to say that word.
Yeah, sure.
When and why did you get into?
Well, so I was coming of age in the 1960s, really, and in some ways it's a similar time that we're in right now, because there was a lot of political violence, because that was when the time when the civil rights movement and actually politics was pretty violent. So I remember when I was 6 years old coming home for lunch, because I used to go to school right down there, and the TV was on and John F. Kennedy had just been assassinated.
Oh, wow.
And the feeling was that one of the reasons why he got assassinated was because he was supportive of civil rights. And then later on, there was different other political assassinations, including Martin Luther King, and there was just the country was just very, what do you call it? Well, there used to be a term. It was called "burn, baby, burn," because a lot of the open rebellion in the streets, particularly in the Black community, because they were protesting for civil rights, for Black power. And then things got a little bit more closer to home when my elder brother, one of my elder brothers, went to UC Berkeley, and he participated in what was called the Third World Strikes in 1969. And that was when, led by the Black Student Union, the students of color and friends, progressive whites, shut down the campus, and to call for ethnic studies and other things that recognize the contributions by communities of color in the curriculum. So it was very major. San Francisco State had gone on strike the year before, but it hit me directly because my brother was involved.
Yes.
And so he turned me on because he started taking ethnic studies courses, and he was learning about Malcolm X and the history of the true history of this country.
Yes.
And so he relayed some of that to me and my younger brother, and so that's how I was really introduced to that. And he also introduced black music to me.
Yes, and you played jazz for the most part.
Yeah, well, I started out playing European classical music, but because of the militant and revolutionary character of a number of black musicians at the time, then I got really interested in playing jazz.
Nice, very nice. Well, thank you for sharing that, and thanks to your brother for introducing such culture to you.
Yeah.
I think you have taken on what he gave you into the community, and you probably changed so many lives that you don't even know about, and I appreciate you for that.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. And I want to go back to the Third War Strike used to Berkeley, because prior to you introducing that sentence or that word to me, I never knew what that was about. And I remember talking to a friend of mine as well, and we were like, we have never heard such we've never heard that in a history book. We haven't heard it in the news. With that, how do you think students nowadays are benefiting from that movement?
Well, students today, at least in the United States, there is what we call ethnic studies.
Yeah.
And it's shown that ethnic studies, well, first off, people find that the education they're getting, some of it is relevant to who they are. And that was really one of the big issues at the time.
Yeah.
And continues to be an issue, but at least the data is showing that, for example, if you can learn about yourself, you can feel better about yourself. And if you can feel better about yourself, you can better persevere through college and make it to the end, or make it. Actually, the data has shown that if people have some introduction to ethnic studies, they are less likely to drop out of school.
Wow.
So the basic idea is that movement rose up to demand that the education system be relevant to their lives. And because we have those programs today, it is showing to be a benefit and improve what are still problematic, what we call retention and graduation rates in college.
Okay.
And so once again, the idea of if you can learn about yourself, you can feel better about yourself and where you come from, and that is essential. Yeah, that's healthy. The other way is not healthy.
Yes, I think so too. And I think part of that is what my podcast is about, right? It's all about like self-reflection and understanding who you are and understanding where you come from. As an Asian American in this country, where growing up as a young child, what are some challenges that you face as a young child, and then do you see similar challenges today?
Well, I think that one of the things that stands out is my parents were immigrants, and even though they had very good language skills, they were actually afraid that if I spoke Chinese, that I would get discriminated against. And particularly at the time we came here in the 1950s, there was this thing called McCarthyism, and then there was a fear of China. And not unlike we have today.
Yeah.
So the impact of the rhetoric in the government, in the society against China, made my folks, reticent or hesitant for me to take on being the what do you call it? The attributes of being Chinese would be to speak Chinese.
Yes.
So then I didn't learn my home language, and in that it instilled a sense that maybe that's not a good thing. You know, being Chinese is not a good thing, and so I think that was a major factor in just basically stripping away of something who I am from the get-go. And so that I would say that that's probably the most, and then it just kind of built on that from there in terms of what the society was not building me up. It was actually saying, well, you're stripping that away, my culture, and kind of preparing me not to have an identity in the society.
Yeah. And do you feel like similar challenges are happening today in our culture, maybe socially?
Well, I would say that the blaming the Asians or blaming China for the coronavirus, and then seeing people attacked on the streets openly for being Asian, especially, or elderly, I don't think that's making our young people feel it's confusing.
Yes.
You know, at best. You know, I think things are different today because there's a lot of us out there organizing and fighting back and resisting. But I'm sure that it's very confusing, bewildering to see the president of the United States and saying, well, that's the Kung flu, or, you know, basically just, what do you call it, denigrating our culture and where we come from.
I definitely hear you on that. You know, I think as a color person myself, I can definitely relate and feel what you were probably feeling during that time. You know, I think as a society, when we have leaders of our country, you know, nitpicking and picking on the people that are actually building the community, it crumbles us from bottom top and from top to bottom. So I think that's one of the things a lot of young people like myself, at least, that I've spoken to, they had a lot of fear. I had friends that told me they weren't going down, especially down to Berkeley. They didn't want to go there because a lot of attack happened down in Berkeley as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, sure.
That was...
Well, I think, you know, in particular, like during coronavirus, you know, there is a large number of Asian Americans who are working in healthcare. And so for them to feel unsafe when they leave the hospital or that, you know, the healthcare facilities, that they might be attacked because they're Asian. I mean, I think that's pretty disconcerting. You know, traumatizing actually even.
Absolutely, I agree. And, you know, what advice would you have for any young Asian descent child, or not even child, an adult, you know, whatever age they're in, to feel, I can't say you can make them feel safe, but have some type of comfort?
Well, in general, in my profession, in my teaching, and what I hear in terms of the data that, in terms of what people feel is needed to be more healthier, is to have a sense of one's history and to have one sense that this is what we've accomplished, but this is the obstacles that we face, and not to be what do you call it, blinded by the promises of the country, but also just knowing what the score is as far as how much abuse that we've faced in our history, and how much we've had to put up with and overcome. And because in doing so, we can feel like, we got this, we can get through this. You know, because that's, I think, the most difficult thing is to feel isolated and helpless. And we don't want our folks to be helpless. And so to know that folks have gone on before, have faced this, and we are here today, so it's certainly possible for us to get through it.
That's true. Thank you. It's a vicious cycle, I feel like
it is.
We're in. Thank you guys again for listening to Self-Reflection Podcast or watching Self-Reflection Podcast. If you are just joining us, we are talking to Francis Wong. We are going to dive into your music background a little bit more.
Great.
Your music is a little bit about politics for the most part. Why did you choose that style of music?
Well, it started up being inspired by musicians like John Coltrane or Max Roach, these African-American masters of the music. And they were making a statement like, we are human, we have feelings, we have a view of the world. And to me, since I didn't grow up with that, in the sense that my parents were trying to be protective of me in a what they thought was a very racist environment, that these musicians inspired me by their work. Charles Mingus. And I also knew that Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were also fans of the music.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave me a certain something to go on, and that I should think of my music as a way to, I don't know, liberate myself and liberate the society.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I actually went to one of his concerts. It was pretty nice. I enjoyed myself. I think I posted a little bit of your concert on my social media.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So it was nice. It was great music. I enjoyed myself. Despite the content of the music, it was still great and fulfilling, so thank you for that. You kind of talk in the middle of your can you explain us a little bit of that process?
Well, so I'm an instrumentalist, so my music doesn't have lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it helps people for me to tell stories, and as a way for people to make it a little bit more relatable. Yeah. And in some ways, I'm influenced by this idea. Back in the 70s, there was this idea that musicians provide the soundtrack to people's lives. And so in some ways, when I'm in a performance, I tell a little story, and I play the music, then people can, in their own imagination, they can imagine themselves, in their lives, and that this music has something to do with it, and it's relatable.
Yeah, I think so. I think music is something that connects people, and despite your language, it can definitely connect a whole community together.
Well, I think it's important to understand that musicians form communities, and that over time we make friends either in the local community or in other cities, because if you want to work in other cities, because you kind of have to be famous in some ways to be invited to different places. But if you know people in these different cities, then you can get invited.
Yes.
And so then you can broaden your horizons. So over the years, I've been to different cities, and I meet people, and we stay friends, and it's not like we're all in the same band, but we're in this kind of wide community, and we have a language, which is improvisational music, so that we can relate to each other without necessarily spending a lot of time rehearsing and all that. So so that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah.
And so but there's all these relationships, like the pianist Erica Oba, who was playing that day. I actually met her parents first. So, and actually the singer who was with me, so he used to teach Okinawan music to her parents.
Oh, wow.
So then I just kind of met that way, and then Dazon Claiborne, who was playing the drums, I met him because I got called to play music in a school, because we had these programs where they send musicians into school. So I got a call and says, "Can you come do this thing?" And he was the drummer, and this was like almost 20 years ago. And so we just continue to work together in all these different kinds of situations.
Yeah.
So it's like old friends, but we support each other because it's not that easy to be at the skill level and to make a living at this. So that's where friends and relationships are an important part of survival.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So for any young artist that is trying to become a musician or be in that industry, what advice would you give them?
Well,
I just want to say there's no, I understand there's no one way of, getting it done.
Sure.
But based on your experience and your knowledge, what would you suggest, I would say?
Well, I think it's we have this term circuit. Like it's important to be in the circuit, meaning it's like the network. But when you say circuit, that means people are connected.
Okay.
So someone's the friend of someone else, is a friend of someone else, or is related, is the brother or the sister of somebody, or I'm old enough to be, I'm a parent. So some of the people I work with are folks that are, it's like, because at the concert, like my kids were there, and then they have friends, and so it's very important to understand that you can't do it all by yourself. And that especially for people of color, we have to establish relationships with people who have an understanding of how hard it is, and then how we need to support each other. And so that's the first thing, is to learn that you don't do it by yourself, and one needs to get good at relating. I mean, everybody has different styles. You don't have to be an extrovert. You can be an introvert, but you still have to have this ability to kind of connect with people. So it's important, especially since there aren't that many of us who are going to get famous. So a lot of us are just going to be working away, and there's other people working away, and then we can all help each other make a living.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that, because as a young artist myself, and a lot of other young artists, sometimes it could feel as if like we got to keep doing it. We got to do it on our own, or we got to just keep driving. So understanding that a community, building a community is one of the most important key to, prolonging your career is important.
Right.
Yeah,
because there's gonna be times when you just feel like, well, okay, for myself, there are just times when I'm just tired. I don't know whether I can push, but then I'll get the phone call, and then he says, "Well, Francis, you can't quit. We need you to do this."
Yes.
So a lot of how I go forward is a lot of folks call me up and say they need me to do something, and just like I call people up and say I need you to do something, and the more we can have a good feeling about it, then we can stay busy and productive and support ourselves.
Talking about finding a community of people calling you and letting you know you can't quit, you can't let go. What motivational speech right now can you give to anyone that is feeling a little bit defeat during this time? Because I feel like this year has been the most challenging year since coronavirus started. In my opinion, I feel like this year has been really challenging in the sense that not only is the virus still around, but people are finding ways to get back into the community, to live a regular life, to move forward past the depression and the anxiety that coronavirus brought upon us, and the loneliness that a lot of people felt during that time. So what motivational, I don't know why you want to call it speech, what little pep talk you have for anyone?
Well, the first thing is not to feel bad if you feel bad, because it is stressful, and the threats are real, so it's important to know that, and then it's important to feel like you can express that and find people that you can express that with, so then you can have people kind of have your back a little bit, I think the second thing is just that we are in a, I feel like we're in an all hands on deck situation in the country, because the politics of the society are crazy, and that we have to do as much as we can. Because democracy is under attack, and it is important to know that this isn't the first time that democracies have been under attack, because democracy actually right now is a code for this country. If it is more democratic, that means more people of color are going to have things to have a say in what's going on, and that's what's threatening the more conservative, or really not even conservative, really right-wing folks who are looking to violence, and lying and all that kind of stuff. So we gotta be a little bit courageous about speaking the truth right now. And I think that's important for artists. It's important for all of us to act on the truth. And so on the one hand, we got to take care of ourselves. On the other hand, part of taking care of ourselves is to act on the truth. And me as an artist, that means I got to stay out there with my messages, and I have to also say, hey, everybody, we got some work to do, and we have, we need to do this for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our future is definitely on the rocks right now.
Yeah, right.
On every angle, right. On every angle. So,
but I think it's important to note that of any time in American history, we have so many, the numbers we have, and the kinds of lives that so many of us, particularly in communities of color, we can do so much. And that actually is the threat. So we cannot back down, from what has already, we've what's the term? We stand on so many people's shoulders to get where we're at. So we just have to show some courage.
Yeah. And lend a shoulder as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you guys again for watching Self-Reflection Podcast. If you were just joining us, we are talking to Francis Wong. I want to say thank you again for having this beautiful conversation with me.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like every time I talk to you, it's never a short answer or yes or no. It's always dense and very meaty, and I really appreciate those type of conversations.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. And I also remember the first time I met you, when I came here with Grandpa George, I was telling you about what I'm doing, and I told you I do a little bit of writing. You're like, show me, let me see. And I whipped out my writing and I started showing you, and you're like, wow, this is really good. You tell a good story, that. And I want to tell you thank you for that, because when I showed you that, I was in a really odd place with my writing. I think I wasn't, not like I didn't believe in myself and in my writing, but I had lost my creativity. And I felt like you just saying those encouraging words, those positive words, kind of let me know that, okay, Lira, you're doing, like, you know, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I want to say thank you for that.
Oh.
Yeah. I never fully, like, you know, told you how that made me felt, but I really appreciate you telling me those kind words.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Thank you. We're gonna dive into your personal life a little bit more. How did you find your voice coming from an immigrant family, knowing that you know, mom and dad wanted you to be a doctor? So how did you find your voice, you know, doing what you do now? Because I think you're supporting a lot of people, still helping the community,
Sure.
In the same way as a doctor would, in my opinion, just in a different way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I discovered, well, first off, particularly in my generation, there weren't a lot of, I had no direct role models within my community. And so the idea that I could, and also it was also at a time when we were, as Asian Americans, we were just starting to define ourselves. Because, let me see, it wasn't until 1968 and when a group of young people, Asian Americans, we weren't even called Asian Americans at the time. We were called Orientals. And so we could call ourselves Chinese or Japanese or Filipino or Vietnamese or, you know, Korean. But we hadn't developed this idea that we should try to come together, take on a label like Asian American at that time, and so that we can have solidarity with each other. And also that we could have solidarity with Chicanos, African Americans, Native Americans, and and then to see that music could be a way to do it. Because otherwise, when I was growing up, you know, I took music lessons, I played in orchestra or band, and it was great, but I was playing other cultures' musics. So the idea of that I could possibly follow, like the folks I talked about, like John Coltrane, to make a statement about who I am, then the light bulb went off that, that would be a reason, that would be something that I could contribute that nobody else besides me could contribute. In terms of, you know, so that's how I found my voice. And then it's just lucky at that time there were other people who were around who were trying to do the same thing. And you know, I've been, you know, so like when we formed Asian Improv Arts, is that there was this guy named John Jang, Chinese American, plays the piano and writes music, and you know, we got to be great friends. Or folks like Glenn Horiuchi, or Jenny Lim was a poet, so who really liked our music. So it's that then all of a sudden this world opened up. That not only was I got to participate in, let's say, the jazz community, but I also was able to have an identity within that, you know, as an Asian American. So I wasn't just copying somebody's music. I actually was generating a new, you know, something that was about me. And then, so I think that's kind of how I found my voice. And so providing that space to others, you know, because a lot of it's just encouraging people, because the society really beats us down.
He definitely knows how to. I would say that. The last sentence you said, The society definitely knows how to strip us down away from our pride, our confidence, our self-esteem. It knows how to, belittle us.
Yes.
And I know I have been through the struggle of just finding myself, and I think I'm still in that process of doing so. For anyone that isn't sure of who they are, or sure of, where their voice is coming from, or where their voice is, how can they, or what are some encouraging words, what are some encouraging words that you can give them to know, like, regardless of what they're going through, regardless of how lost they are in this moment, as they can still come up on the other side?
Well, to me, it's a big part for me was finding people who've done it before.
Yeah.
And then also it's not just the people, but also the knowledge. So history, not in a very dry book history kind of thing, but the history of what like people like ourselves has been through. So I mean, that's a lot of why I keep these photos of my parents, and my dad and my grandfather, and just say like, okay, because it's like this picture of my dad. He's 17 years old, right? And he looks young, but it was a very serious photo because China was at war with Japan, and he took this picture to go join the Air Force. So he wanted to resist. And so in a lot of ways, I just take that to heart, that I'm part of the resistance.
Absolutely.
And then it's been done, and here we are. So there can be bad days, but there's a sense that we keep on going. Just like I said, the kids were at the concert. My wife is, we're all here. So it's like the human chain, of kind of continuing on, that sense of hey, life is worth living, and we have a choice in the things that we do.
Absolutely. Thank you. Life is worth living. I love that. Despite as challenging it is, sometimes, I think it's definitely worth living. It's a beautiful gift, I would say.
It is.
And we're gonna bring it into your sleep cycle, because I know a lot of people struggle with the same thing that you do, insomnia. I'm gonna let you kind of talk about that for the most part. I know you kind of just off camera, you mentioned to me you've been sleeping around 4:30, and that's an improvement. So how have you been dealing with insomnia? What has been working?
Well, there's this term, counterintuitive, where a lot of people think that to get enough sleep, you need to go to sleep earlier. But what it turns out is that if you have insomnia, what time you get up is what makes a lot of the difference. Meaning, there's this thing called circadian rhythms, and so a lot of the light cycle is what stimulates certain hormones to be released, like melatonin or things that are going to make you sleepy. Is that you get a certain amount of light, and then when it gets dark, then you feel sleepy. Now, I have a problem because I have made choices in order to do my work as a musician. Well, musicians work at night, not even night, into the early morning.
Yeah.
And then also, as my kids were growing up, I often did a lot of my creative work after they went to bed. So I've already kind of had a predisposition to resist the circadian rhythms.
Yes.
So now what I'm being advised is that in order to get back to, I have a little bit, sometimes I think about it as like I have a kind of like a jet lag.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm really in another part of the world.
Yeah.
And in some ways I am because of what I do as a musician, right? So, and one of the things that one does to fight jet lag is resist the urge to go to sleep when you're not supposed to go to sleep. So, so in terms of reversing my situation, I'm saying, I've been told by the doctors is, okay, slowly get your sleep time you wake up earlier, and once you get up, when you get up, always go outside and get some sunlight, because your retinas, your eyes activate it sends the message that you should be awake. And then the sooner you are awake, the sooner on the other end you're going to be tired enough to go to sleep.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And it's not dramatic because it doesn't happen overnight, because it's been decades that I've kind of had this lifestyle. So it's just like, okay, it's like I'm just trying to move the needle, because when I first met you, I was going to sleep more like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So I've got myself back.
And this is 8 a.m.
Yeah, 8 a.m. So I think the other thing that I've worked on with the insomnia also is I have to stop working. I have to work against my natural drive to work.
Yeah.
That, of course, part of it is I'm 65, so I'm retiring. I should, and I'm going to need to sleep more. So, doing things before bed that are going to, instead of like getting all worked up, to really try to wind down.
Yeah.
As part, because one of the things that even I think, especially when I started to become a young adult, I really didn't want to go to sleep. There was too much to do.
Yeah.
It was too exciting. The world was too exciting.
Yeah.
So now it's just like, okay, I need to kind of wind down and not resist falling asleep, and then getting up earlier in a process so that I feel tired by the time it's
bedtime.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you have routines of winding down for, maybe somebody else listening to this podcast episode might be struggling with some insomnia and looking for some ways to fall asleep as well?
Well, so I changed my TV watching habit, later. I mean, so instead of, because I really like procedural crime dramas. That kind of works you up.
Yeah.
So I kind of move towards watching things that are a little bit more relaxing.
Okay.
So it could be kind of more slice of life kind of dramas, where it's not like there's no criminals, and, some people getting chased.
No action.
Yeah. So that, or watching nature, and then reading out of a book, because if you read on your phone, actually the light on the phone keeps you up. So reading from a book, but I have to read more literature, like stories, but stories that are going to relax me. So that's another thing. And then I have to make sure I exercise enough during the day, because sometimes I think it's like my daughter has a couple of dogs, and you got to take the dogs out, and they got to run around. If they don't run around, they're just going to be really cranky.
Yes.
Yeah. So So I have a stationary cycle, or my wife and I take a walk after dinner, and then having a certain minimum amount that I'm trying to do. So, and then I track myself on my little watch here. So.
Okay, that's good. 4:30 is better than 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
so a big improvement, actually, thinking about it.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to turning the clocks back. Maybe that's going to help me a little bit. You know, because the other part of it is, it's going to get darker earlier, and then maybe that'll move things another hour.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that part
sure.
of your personal life.
yeah. No, well, it's like people don't realize, but insomnia affects at least the majority of the people in the United States, if not like 2/3 to 3/4, something like that. Someone, you can fact check it.
Okay.
It's a major problem in the United States.
Yeah, and working with the longer hours, I think we were talking about it off camera. Yeah, that doesn't help us as well.
Well, especially you look at my situation. It's like, in order to piece together a living, I have to work 3, 4, 5 jobs, at a time. So so it's, but that's part of the situation. Like if you're, all these folks driving Uber, or, work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all situations that are kind of not so good for the sleep.
That's true. Absolutely. Before we end our podcast episode for today, I want you to share a little bit more about your company, Asian Improv, and what you guys do.
Okay, so I have a company called Asian Improv Arts, and the improv, sometimes people confuse it with improve, but it's really improv, meaning improvisation. But a lot of times when people think improvisation, they think we're comedians, but we're musicians. So it's more from the improvisational approach to music. And we started out as trying to amplify the voices of Asian Americans making music in whatever genre, and particularly in the jazz field. Over time, we've branched out to work with dancers and writers and filmmakers, and with an emphasis on supporting leadership because as an artist, one of the main ways in which one can make in order to make more and more ambitious work and to make a living, is actually working with teams of artists. So the idea of leading teams of artists is an important part of what we try to support, and that's why we provide a certain amount of mentorship, advice on, like, say, okay, so these are the way, this is where the money is, and these are the things that you need to do in order to access that money and those resources. Because it's not just money. I mean, there's what we call, resources like venues, how to use social media, all these different things. And so Asian Improv, really our mission is to really build a network, this network that we have of artists supporting each other, but also not just artists. We have scholars, because that's an important part of promoting the importance of our work. So we got professors like myself saying, I have artists come into my classroom, and I tell the students, well, this artist is doing interesting work. So we have scholars, and then we have folks who work in funding and business, and so have this network of support that can make it more possible for more artists to make a living. But also, our particular mission has to do with social justice and racial equity. So, and in that sense, we're somewhat unique because we
Yeah.
still don't have enough organizations who are truly working for racial equity.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot of people trying.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a lot, but there's people trying. But then, we have a track record of being actually in the fight,
Yes.
For quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, 35 years. So.
Wow. Yeah. So, do you guys have a social media if anyone wants to follow?
Yeah. So, look for, I think, at Asian Improv
Okay.
on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we're also on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my personal handles, Francis Wong SF. That's my Twitter handle.
Mm-hmm. Follow.
And I'm also on Facebook too. So
Yeah. And as we come close to our interview, my podcast is somewhat related to mental health as well. And this is a question that I kind of ask almost everyone, if not everyone that comes on.
Sure.
What do you do to take care of yourself and of your mental health?
Well, so this is I'm in an interesting place, because I met you through my father passing away, and he had dementia.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in my 60s, so trying to think about how to deal with, in some ways, there's certain inevitability about, becoming frail or something like that, and then there's a certain, one has to keep up the spirit.
Yes.
And so there's different things that I know I'm trying to do. So I'm make sure, before I practice music because that's kind of my job.
Yeah. But
now I'm carving out practice time just to keep my mind sharp. So so my parents, my dad and my mom were into French music. So like songs from the post World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been trying to memorize, my goal is to memorize 100 songs.
Whoa.
So I'm up to 10 right now. So the idea is that then I memorize the songs and I play them every night.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of how I relax too.
Yeah.
But it also is part of because physical muscle memory is, you're still going to have that even if, let's say, some, like my father was losing his memories and things like that, but he still had his muscle memory.
Yes.
So even, to the end, he had very nice handwriting. His penmanship was very good.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying? So it's just staying in control of certain, fine motor skills. I think music is great because I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to make sure I remember the song.
Yes.
And then there's a connection emotionally. So because of my my parents and stuff like that. So. So that's one of the things that I'm doing. And then also, I just spent, I think caregiving it's just increasing reality for all of us, is we're going to have to take care of somebody.
That's true.
And so being somewhat mindful in the way we give care, I think that's, because I learned a lot about, with my father, just dealing with pain and how even listening to music or can be part of making things more bearable and more positive.
Absolutely.
So,
thank you for sharing. I want to say thank you again for joining me on Self-Reflection Podcast.
Oh, sure.
I really appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And again, I appreciate that conversation we had that night about my writing.
Well, I have to say, you're a very striking person.
Thank you.
Because you know, I asked you to see your writing, and you were just very forthright. Well, here it is. Yes,
Here you
know,
go.
and I think that's very important, because even for myself, you know, like well, I'm a lot better about sharing my writing. So, but for a long time, I didn't think that I haven't had anything really to offer. So.
Thank you. Well, you do have a lot to offer, and you're doing a lot for the community. So I really appreciate you. And again, thank you again for joining me on Self-Reflection Podcast. Do you have any final words?
Oh no, I mean, I just think what you're doing is great, you know, and keep on doing it. And you know, I think you got something. You got something to say, so just go do it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If this is your first time coming across Self-Reflection Podcast, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, and the link is on my Instagram bio. You can connect with me at Lira, Lira_Ndifon. Also, I have a YouTube page. It's called Self-Reflection Podcast. So go ahead, check it out. Thank you guys again for listening. I hope you have a blessed day. Take care of yourself. Love yourself. Be kind and be gentle with yourself. Until next time, y'all. Stay well.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.